Sarah Green, a quiet assistant at a luxury skincare company, was often overlooked by colleagues for being too ordinary. She was mocked behind her back and ignored in meetings. But when the CEO stepped down unexpectedly, Sarah's innovative ideas and unmatched work ethic pushed her into the spotlight. What she did was beyond imagination. Stay tuned to find out what she did. Welcome to Hall of Gentle Stories. Where are you watching from? Let's know in the comment below. Make sure you see this amazing story till the end, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Let's begin. It was just another day in downtown Chicago, where glass towers touch the sky and ambition runs thicker than the wind off Lake Michigan. Inside the sleek headquarters of Lumiere, skincare, a brand known for luxury creams and celebrity endorsements, the air buzzed with quiet arrogance. In a private lounge on the top floor, a small group of executives leaned back in their designer suits, swirling their Starbucks lattes and exchanging hushed laughs. Their target, a woman across the hall, Sarah Green. She was easy to overlook. No bold lipstick, no designer heels, just simple blouses and worn-out flats. She kept her head down, organizing schedules, quietly taking notes in meetings, like a shadow blending into the walls. One executive chuckled, "Can you imagine her running this place? She can barely run an email chain." Another smirked, "Sarah? She'll never make it past that desk." The room erupted in quiet laughter, like they all shared some inside joke about her. A joke she wasn't even aware of. But here's the part they didn't see coming. Because while they were too busy laughing, Sarah was paying attention to everything. Every missed detail, every overlooked mistake, every crack in the foundation of the company they thought was untouchable. They saw a plain assistant. What they didn't realize was that Sarah Green wasn't just sitting at her desk. She was studying their every move. And sooner than anyone expected, those same people mocking her behind closed doors, they'd be the ones answering to her. But how did it happen? How does someone so invisible suddenly rise to the top, faster than anyone saw coming? Well, that's the part they wish they'd paid attention to. Because Sarah Green was about to become the boss they never saw coming. Sarah Green. If you asked most people at Lumiere Skincare who she was, they'd pause. Maybe squint their eyes like they were trying to remember. "Oh, the assistant," someone might finally say. "The one who brings coffee to meetings?" That's all Sarah was to them, a background character, a ghost in the office. Always there, but never really seen. Every morning, she walked into the towering glass building in downtown Chicago, slipping through the revolving doors, alongside sleek executives in $1,000 suits and red-bottomed heels. No one noticed her scuffed flats or the bag she'd been using for 3 years. They noticed the bold, confident ones, the people who spoke the loudest, dressed the flashiest, and networked at every Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. Sarah, though, she kept her head down. She answered calls for her boss, double-checked calendars, and scribbled notes in meetings, notes that someone else would later present as their own ideas. It happened more than once. She'd suggest a new marketing angle for an anti-aging cream, only to hear her boss, Rachel, pitch it at a board meeting the next day, without even a mention of Sarah. And when those ideas worked, Rachel got the credit. Sarah got more coffee orders. The office buzzed with high-level conversations about influencer, deals and exclusive launches. But no one ever asked Sarah's opinion, not once. She was invisible, a fixture at Lumiere, like the lobby plants or the water cooler. But here's what no one realized. While they were too busy talking over her, Sarah was listening. She noticed the cracks in the company, the missed emails, the botched collaborations, the way Rachel conveniently forgot to respond to important clients. She saw which products were quietly flopping despite the glowing press releases. She knew which influencers weren't happy, which suppliers were pulling out, and which deals were hanging by a thread. Sarah didn't just know the office gossip, she knew the business. Every spreadsheet, every marketing strategy, every overlooked mistake, Sarah paid attention to all of it. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. See, Sarah wasn't just some quiet assistant. She had a degree in business from Northwestern, University, something no one at Lumiere bothered to ask. She knew how companies worked, and more importantly, she knew how they collapsed. But to everyone else, she was just the girl who fixed the printer and remembered Rachel's favorite oat milk latte order. Until one day, when something unexpected happened. Something that would change Sarah's life and the entire future of Lumiere Skincare. Because while they all ignored her, Sarah was quietly becoming the most dangerous person in that office. The question wasn't whether they saw it coming. It was, how long would it take before they realized she wasn't invisible anymore? At Lumiere Skincare, success wasn't about how smart you were. It wasn't about how hard you worked. It was about how good you looked doing it. The corner offices weren't filled with the brightest minds. They were occupied by the loudest personalities. Executives with designer handbags and perfectly tailored suits. The ones who took long lunches at Soho House, Chicago, snapping photos with influencers over avocado toast, pretending the meeting was about strategy, when it was really about looking important. Sarah Green. She wasn't part of that world. Her wardrobe was simple, neutral blouses, worn-in flats, and a black cardigan she kept draped over her chair. She didn't wear bold lipstick or carry a Louis Vuitton tote. She wasn't the type to hover by the coffee machine, laughing too loudly at a manager's joke just to be noticed. And people noticed that, but not in the way Sarah hoped. She wasn't invited to after-work drinks at the aviary. She didn't get pulled into last-minute brainstorming sessions or added to flashy email threads about celebrity partnerships. When Lumiere hosted its annual networking gala, a glitzy event at a downtown rooftop bar, Sarah's name wasn't on the guest list, not because they forgot, but because they didn't think she belonged there. She just doesn't have the image for leadership, someone whispered once, loud enough for Sarah to hear as she refilled the office snack station. Another time, she overheard Rachel, her boss, chuckling with a few senior staff members about how Sarah was too plain to ever represent the brand. Can you imagine sending her to a product launch? Rachel scoffed. Our clients want style, not a librarian. Sarah said nothing. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry in the restroom or complain to HR. She just smiled politely and went back to work. But here's what they didn't see. While those executives were busy posing for Instagram stories and chasing clout, Sarah was at her desk, reviewing contracts, analyzing sales data, and quietly noting every missed opportunity. She knew which products were underperforming, which influencer deals were more about appearances than actual impact, and which marketing campaigns were hemorrhaging money. No one asked her for solutions, so Sarah didn't offer any. Not yet. She was playing the long game. Because Sarah understood something those stylish executives didn't. Real power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from knowing what no one else does. And soon, very soon, the people who mocked Sarah for being plain and invisible would find out that the most dangerous person in the room is the one you never saw coming. No one saw it coming. On a quiet Monday morning, Lumiere Skincare's employees walked into their glass-walled office in downtown Chicago, the same place where polished executives clinked wine glasses at rooftop events and influencers paraded their newest collaborations on social media. But something felt off. There was a strange hush in the air, whispered conversations by the espresso machine, nervous glances exchanged in the hallways, and then an email. Subject, statement from Lumiere Skincare's board of directors. The CEO, Blake Calloway, the charismatic face of Lumiere, had officially resigned. Effective immediately. No farewell speech. No graceful exit. Just gone. Rumors spread like wildfire. Word on the street was that Blake wasn't stepping down because of personal reasons. And like the email claimed, no, there were whispers of something much darker. Embezzlement. Allegations that millions of dollars meant for product development. Influencer partnerships and marketing campaigns had simply vanished. Investors were furious. Stocks took an instant hit, dropping 12% in a single afternoon. And the board? They scrambled. Suddenly, the glamorous facade of Lumiere Skincare began to crack. For years, the company had promoted people who looked the part. Stylish, confident, camera-ready. But now, with their leader gone and the company's future in jeopardy, looks couldn't save them. Rachel, Sarah's boss, was pulled into emergency meetings with senior staff. The same Rachel who once laughed about Sarah being too plain to represent the brand. But when Rachel was asked about sales projections, supply chain issues, and upcoming product launches, she fumbled. She didn't have answers because Rachel, like most of the top executives, had spent more time building an image than building skills. Panic spread through the office. Marketing campaigns were abruptly cancelled. Influencer partnerships were put on hold. And investors, they weren't patient. One of Lumiere's biggest backers, a venture capital firm in New York, threatened to pull out if the board didn't name a new CEO within the week. But there was a problem. Their so-called leaders, the ones with designer suits and perfectly curated LinkedIn profiles, didn't have the expertise to steer the company through a crisis. For the first time, the board realized the truth. They had built Lumiere on style, but now they needed substance. And as the chaos unfolded in boardrooms and break rooms, Sarah watched quietly from her desk. The woman everyone overlooked, the assistant they dismissed as invisible, she knew the company inside and out. The cracks in the supply chain, the overspending on influencer deals, the neglected product lines quietly losing money. Sarah knew, and soon, so would everyone else. It happened in the most unexpected way. The boardroom at Lumiere Skincare's Chicago headquarters was a pressure cooker, a long glass table surrounded by nervous executives, some scrolling through their phones, others whispering among themselves. The chair at the head of the table, once reserved for Blake Calloway, sat empty. The company was on the brink. Investors were pulling out. The media was circling like vultures. And the board? They were desperate for answers. Rachel, the marketing director, stumbled through a presentation full of buzzwords but empty of substance. We need to rebrand, leverage influencer partnerships, create viral moments. Blank stares. Someone from finance suggested slashing budgets, but couldn't explain which areas to cut without risking more damage. Another executive proposed hiring a crisis PR firm, but no one could agree on what the company's message should be. Silence thickened the air. That's when it happened. A soft voice, calm, steady, cut through the noise. Sarah. She was standing at the end of the table, still wearing her simple cardigan and worn-out sneakers, a sharp contrast to the designer suits and expensive watches around her. No one had noticed her until now. But what she said made everyone stop. I think we need to focus on the supply chain first, Sarah began. We have 40,000 units of the Radiance serum sitting in a warehouse in Austin because the distribution team hasn't processed the paperwork. That's over 2 million in unsold products. A pause. All eyes locked on Sarah. She wasn't finished. Our influencer campaigns are bleeding money, she continued. We've paid nearly $500,000 this quarter to content creators with no clear ROI, and customer complaints about delayed shipping have tripled since last month. Because we cut warehouse staff to fund those partnerships. Rachel's jaw tightened. One of the board members leaned forward. How do you know all this? Sarah blinked, her voice still calm. I manage the daily reports. I see the numbers. No one's been looking at them. The room stunned. It was a moment of quiet revelation. This wasn't just some assistant. Sarah knew the bones of the company, the cracks in the foundation, the hidden leaks no one had bothered to notice. Rachel, flustered, tried to regain control. Well, Sarah, thank you for your input, but one of the senior board members, a stern-faced man in his 60s, cut her off. Hold on. He looked directly at Sarah. What would you do first if you were in charge? The room went dead silent. Sarah's heart pounded, but she didn't hesitate. I'd freeze all influencer partnerships immediately, redirect those funds into restaffing our distribution team so we can get the products moving again, and I'd release a public statement. Not about rebranding, but about fixing the internal issues. More silence. The board exchanged glances. Rachel's face was a mix of shock and rage, and then a quiet voice from the end of the table. Ned, she's right. Another board member nodded slowly. It's risky, but it's a plan. By the end of the meeting, something happened that no one, not Rachel, not the board, could have predicted. With no better options, and with the company unraveling, the board took a gamble. They offered Sarah an interim leadership role, effective immediately. An assistant, the woman they never invited to networking events, the one Rachel mocked behind closed doors, now in charge of saving the company. But the question lingered in the air. Was this a bold move or a desperate mistake? And Sarah? She wasn't celebrating. She knew this wasn't a victory, it was a test she had no choice but to pass. The moment Sarah stepped into her new role at Lumiere Skincare's Chicago headquarters, the whispers began. At first, they were quiet, exchanged in hushed voices by the water cooler or during a casual coffee runs. Did you hear? An assistant is running the company now. She probably just got lucky in that meeting. But soon the murmurs grew louder. It wasn't just office gossip anymore. It was a coordinated attack. Emails Sarah never sent were suddenly forwarded to senior board members, full of errors and careless mistakes. Reports she submitted, the same reports that once impressed the board, started coming back incomplete or miscalculated. And then there was the meeting, a high-stakes call with a major distributor in New York, to one that could stabilize Lumiere's collapsing supply chain. Sarah had spent days preparing for it, researching, analyzing, drafting a solid plan. But when the meeting started, she realized she had the wrong set of numbers. The sales projections on her screen were outdated by 2 months, making her entire pitch look sloppy and uninformed. The distributor's rep, frustrated. Rachel, sitting across the table, didn't say a word, but the faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth said everything. It wasn't an accident. Sarah's files had been switched. Her emails were being intercepted, and someone inside the company was feeding false information to make her look incompetent. The question wasn't if Sarah was being sabotaged, it was who was behind it. The board began to have doubts. She's too inexperienced, one member muttered after the meeting. Too plain, another said behind closed doors. She doesn't have the leadership presence for this. Even the CEO of Lumiere's parent company had reportedly asked, why her? She doesn't look like someone who can save a brand. But Sarah didn't react the way they expected. She didn't lash out. She didn't accuse anyone. Instead, she started paying attention. She noticed how Rachel always seemed to have a copy of her emails, even the ones marked confidential. She caught a junior executive, one of Rachel's closest allies, loitering near her desk long after office hours when Sarah's laptop was still open. And she realized that every mistake seemed to conveniently benefit the same group of people. So Sarah made a choice. She didn't fight back with anger. She fought back with strategy. She created decoy reports, planting subtle errors in fake documents left on her desk. She added trackers to her outgoing emails, small digital tags showing who opened them and when. And during the next board meeting, when Rachel smugly presented Sarah's flawed budget plan, Sarah calmly pulled out the real one. The boardroom fell silent. It wasn't just that Sarah had the correct numbers. It was that she could prove someone had tampered with the originals. The board didn't say a word, but the shift in their expressions was clear. Rachel wasn't just undermining Sarah. She was risking the company's future. And for the first time since Sarah's unexpected rise, the board started asking a different question. What else has Rachel been hiding? Sarah didn't need to raise her voice or call for justice. She let the truth speak for itself. But the war wasn't over, because now the people trying to destroy Sarah weren't just worried about making her look bad. They were terrified of what she might uncover next. They thought they had her cornered. After the sabotage, the whispers, the planted mistakes, Sarah was supposed to crumble. But instead, she did something no one expected. She didn't waste time fighting Rachel or the executives who tried to tear her down. She focused on something bigger. Sarah took a long, hard look at Lumiere Skincare, a brand once considered luxurious, but now struggling to stay relevant. And she saw the problem. While other skincare brands were shifting toward sustainability, using eco-friendly packaging, Cruelty-free testing and clean ingredients, Lumiere was stuck in the past. Plastic-heavy products, outdated formulas, a company clinging to its old ways. While the world moved forward, Sarah made a bold decision. She called an emergency meeting, not with the board, but with the marketing team, product developers, and a select group of young, innovative staff, the people who actually understood what modern customers wanted. Her plan? A complete rebrand, shifting Lumiere's entire focus to sustainable skincare. The room fell silent. One executive smirked. That sounds idealistic, but do you realize how much that would cost? The board won't approve it. Sarah didn't flinch. She wasn't asking for permission. She was making it happen. Within days, Sarah reached out to two of the biggest names in beauty retail, Sephora and Ulta Beauty, pitching a bold new collaboration. A limited edition Lumiere Green line, eco-conscious skincare products made with recycled packaging and vegan formulas. But here's the twist. Instead of flashy ads featuring celebrities, Sarah proposed something different. A story-driven campaign. Real people, real stories. Highlighting how Lumiere wasn't just changing its products, but taking responsibility for its impact on the planet. The campaign's tagline? Beauty without a trace. A promise that Lumiere's products would leave no trace on the environment. Just like true beauty leaves no trace of harm, the gamble paid off. When Sephora and Ulta announced their partnership with Lumiere on social media, the response was overwhelming. To Beauty Without a Trace started trending on Twitter and Instagram within hours. Influencers and eco-conscious beauty bloggers praised Sarah's vision. Customers who once overlooked Lumiere suddenly saw it as a brand with purpose. And the sales? They didn't just rise, they exploded. Within the first month, Lumiere's green line sold out at both Sephora's flagship store in New York, City and Ulta's location in Los Angeles. Even national magazines like Allure and Vogue began covering the story. Not just about the products, but about the woman behind the transformation. And those same executives, the ones who mocked Sarah for being too inexperienced and too plain, were now scrambling. Suddenly, they were the ones praising her strategy, lining up to offer their support, hoping to be part of the success they once tried to sabotage. But Sarah didn't forget. She smiled at their compliments, but kept a mental note of every person who had once doubted her. Because now, Sarah wasn't just saving Lumiere skincare, she was running it. And for the first time, the people who tried to break her were realizing a harsh truth. Sarah didn't just survive their sabotage, she used it to rise higher than they ever could have imagined. Success wasn't a shield. If anything, it made Sarah a bigger target. Just when Lumiere's green line was dominating shelves at Sephora and Ulta, and the brand's bold shift to sustainable skincare was earning praise from Allure and Vogue, the storm hit. But this time, it wasn't subtle. It started with a sudden email, marked urgent, summoning Sarah to an emergency board meeting at Lumiere's headquarters in Los Angeles. No explanation, no agenda. Just a cold, formal note from the board's chairman, Richard Hale, a man who had never quite masked his skepticism about Sarah's leadership. When Sarah entered the sleek glass conference room, the tension was thick. The board members sat stiffly, their usual polite greetings replaced by tight-lipped stares. In the center of the table, printed copies of a report were stacked, each page stamped with bold black letters, evidence of financial mismanagement. And at the bottom, Sarah's name. The accusations were brutal. According to the report, Sarah had supposedly funneled company funds into unapproved marketing campaigns, overstocked products without proper forecasting, and misled investors about Lumiere's revenue projections. The numbers painted a picture of recklessness, a leader making impulsive decisions, risking the company's future. One board member cleared his throat. "Sarah," he said, his voice measured but sharp, "these figures are concerning. We need answers." But Sarah didn't flinch, because she knew exactly what this was. This wasn't a financial crisis, it was a setup, and she had a strong suspicion who was behind it. Rachel, the former CEO who had been forced out after Sarah's bold rebranding success. Sarah had heard whispers. Rachel still had connections within the company, allies who resented Sarah's rise. And now it seemed Rachel had played her final card, leaking false reports to investors, hoping to destroy Sarah's reputation. But here's the part Rachel didn't see coming. Sarah wasn't caught off guard. She was ready. Calmly, Sarah reached into her bag and placed her own stack of documents on the table. Real financial records, verified, audited. She didn't just deny the allegations, she dismantled them. Page by page, she walked the board through every campaign expense, every product order, every revenue projection. That came the game changer. Sarah revealed something the board hadn't expected. A secret partnership deal, one she had been quietly negotiating with Target. The deal would place Lumiere's Green Line in over 500 Target stores across the United States. A move that would double their retail presence overnight. Silence, stunned faces, and then Richard Hale, the same man who had questioned Sarah moments ago, slowly nodded. "Well, this changes things," he muttered. The emergency meeting that had started as an attack on Sarah's leadership ended with the board congratulating her for securing the biggest deal in Lumiere's history. As Sarah gathered her papers and prepared to leave, she noticed one thing, the smile slipping from a board member's face, a man who had always been a bit too close to Rachel. He didn't expect Sarah to win, but she did, because while they were busy plotting her downfall, Sarah was already 10 steps ahead. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? Just days after Sarah shut down the false accusations against her, something even more shocking unfolded at Lumiere's Los Angeles headquarters. It wasn't over. Because Sarah wasn't just interested in clearing her name, she wanted to expose the people who tried to destroy her. And this time, she wasn't holding back. At the next board meeting, the same room where they had once questioned her leadership, Sarah walked in with a single manila folder. No assistants, no legal team, just her and the truth. The board members, still riding the high from Sarah's partnership deal with Target, exchanged nervous glances. They didn't expect another bombshell. But Sarah calmly placed the folder on the table and said, "What I'm about to show you didn't start with me." She opened the folder, and what followed stunned the room. Sarah had uncovered a hidden trail of corruption, one that led straight to the former leadership, including Rachel. The documents revealed how, under Rachel's direction, Lumiere's funds had been secretly funneled into personal adventures, lavish business trips that were more like vacations to the Four Seasons in Maui, expensive dinners at Nobu Malibu, and unexplained wire transfers disguised as consulting fees. But that wasn't all. Sarah had also obtained email exchanges, leaked by a whistleblower within the finance department, exposing how Rachel and two senior executives had manipulated sales data, inflating revenue numbers to secure more investor funding. And the most damaging part? The very same people who accused Sarah of mismanagement were the ones responsible for the company's real financial scandals. For a moment, silence. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the shuffle of papers as board members read the evidence, and the sharp exhale of Richard Hale, the chairman. Then Sarah said something that no one could argue with. "This company didn't need saving from me. It needed saving from them." The reaction was swift and brutal. Richard Hale, his face tight with frustration, didn't hesitate. He called for an immediate vote of confidence in Sarah's leadership. And what happened next sent shockwaves through the company. The board unanimously voted to remove the guilty executives, including Rachel's closest allies, effective immediately. Their resignations weren't quiet either. By the end of the day, Lumiere's internal memo was all over social media, with Lumiere cleanup trending on Twitter. And then came the moment no one saw coming. Richard Hale cleared his throat again, but this time his voice was steady. "Sarah, it's time we make this official." In a decision that once seemed impossible, the board unanimously voted to appoint Sarah as the official CEO of Lumiere. No more interim title, no more question marks. She wasn't just running the company anymore, she was building its future. And as Sarah left that meeting, The very room where they once tried to bring her down. She knew one thing. She didn't just win the battle, she changed the game. Because when people plot your downfall, the best revenge is success they can't stop. Isn't it strange how the same people who once dismissed you suddenly remember your name the moment you succeed? That's exactly what happened to Sarah. Just weeks after being named the official CEO of Lumiere Skincare, the atmosphere inside the company's Los Angeles headquarters had shifted, but not in the way you'd expect. The same executives who used to brush past Sarah in the hallway, the ones who whispered about her plain style and called her a placeholder, were now hanging on to her every word. Emails that once went unanswered now flooded her inbox, invitations to exclusive events, partnership proposals, and glowing congratulations from people who never acknowledged her before. But Sarah didn't let it distract her. She wasn't there to win their approval. She was there to rebuild Lumiere. And her first move? Redesign the brand. From the inside out, gone were the days of chasing unrealistic beauty standards, the airbrushed models and the shallow campaigns that once defined Lumiere's image. Instead, Sarah introduced a bold new message. Real beauty isn't flawless, it's authentic. The company's new campaign, Unfiltered Confidence, featured everyday women, nurses, teachers, and mothers without heavy makeup or excessive retouching. The boldest move? Sarah partnered with Dove for a joint ad that aired during the Super Bowl, a spot that showed side by side images of the same models, one photo edited to perfection, the other raw and unfiltered. The tagline was simple but powerful. Your skin tells a story, let it be yours. At first, there was pushback, especially from those who had grown comfortable with Lumiere's old ways. Critics questioned whether this shift would hurt sales, but Sarah didn't flinch. She told her team, "We're not selling insecurities, we're selling self-worth." And the results spoke louder than words. In just 6 months, Lumiere's revenue hit record-breaking numbers, climbing 42%, the largest jump in the company's history. Major retailers like Sephora and Ulta Beauty expanded their shelf space for Lumiere products, while social media buzz grew, with influencers praising Sarah for redefining what a beauty brand could be. Then came the moment no one could ignore. Sarah was featured in Forbes, not just for her success, but for her unorthodox leadership. Her story, once mocked, was now a headline. From too plain to powerhouse CEO, how's Sarah? Thompson transformed Lumiere Skincare. Soon after, the New York Times called her the face of a new beauty revolution, while Vogue highlighted her in a feature titled, Real Skin, Real Stories, Meet the Woman Changing the Industry. But here's the most interesting part. At an awards gala in Beverly Hills, it's funny how people only remember you when they need something. The Beverly Hills Hotel was glowing that night. Golden chandeliers, velvet carpets, and a guest list filled with the who's who of the beauty industry. It was the annual Golden Bloom Awards, a prestigious event where industry leaders gathered, not just to celebrate success, but to be seen. Sarah stood at the center of it all, poised, elegant, and unbothered. The woman they once called too plain was now the CEO everyone wanted a picture with. But then, there she was. Rachel, the same former executive who once ignored Sarah in boardrooms, belittled her ideas, and quietly laughed with others about how ordinary Sarah looked. Back then, Rachel had status, power, the kind that made her feel untouchable. Now, she was just another guest, clutching a half-empty glass of champagne, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The moment their eyes met, Rachel's entire demeanor shifted, her back straightened, her expression softening into something that almost looked friendly. Sarah. Rachel's voice was a little too enthusiastic. It's been so long. I always knew you were destined for something big. Sarah tilted her head slightly, her expression calm, unreadable. Rachel kept talking, reminiscing about the good old days at Lumiere Skincare, acting as though they'd been colleagues, not adversaries. But then Sarah spoke. Her voice was soft, not angry, not bitter, just clear. Funny, she said, a faint smile on her lips. I don't remember you paying attention to me back then. Silence. Rachel blinked once, then twice, her smile faltering for just a second. The people standing nearby shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their drinks. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was a blow, a final, undeniable reminder that the woman Rachel once dismissed was now standing in a place Rachel could no longer reach. Sarah didn't need to raise her voice to be heard, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remind people, without anger, without resentment, that you remember exactly how they treated you when they thought you were nothing. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They hear everything, remember everything, and when the moment comes, they don't have to seek revenge. Success does that for them. That night, Sarah didn't gloat. She didn't rub her victory in Rachel's face. She simply smiled and walked away, leaving Rachel standing there, trapped in the weight of her own regret. And as Sarah moved through the crowd, shaking hands with CEOs, signing deals, and accepting congratulations, one thing was certain. The girl they once ignored had become the most powerful woman in the room. How many times have you judged someone without really knowing who they are? Think about it. The quiet co-worker at the office who never speaks up in meetings. The cashier at the grocery store who keeps their head down. The classmate who sits in the back of the room unnoticed. How often do we assume their silence means weakness? That their lack of flash means they lack value? Sarah's story isn't just about climbing to the top or getting the last word. It's about something deeper, something most people don't want to admit. Because the truth is, we've all been Rachel at some point. Maybe not out loud, but in our minds. We've sized someone up based on their looks, their clothes, their presence, or lack of it, and decided almost instantly that they didn't matter. But what happens when the person you dismissed becomes the one holding all the power? What happens when the plain girl you ignored at work is suddenly on the cover of Forbes? Or when the quiet guy you barely noticed in college is now the keynote speaker at a sold-out event? The shift is jarring, not because they changed, but because you never truly saw them to begin with. Sarah didn't reinvent herself to gain the world's respect. She didn't trade her authenticity for acceptance. She simply grew into the person she always was, the person people refused to see. And maybe that's the hardest pill to swallow, because it forces us to ask ourselves, how many people have I underestimated, simply because they didn't fit the image of success in my head? But there's another side to this. What if you're not Rachel? What if you're Sarah? What if you've spent years feeling invisible, passed over for promotions, left out of conversations, ignored in rooms where your ideas should have mattered? What if you've heard the whispers, too plain, too quiet, too unremarkable, and let them sink into your skin like they were facts, not just opinions? Here's the message Sarah's story leaves behind, the message you need to hear. Your silence doesn't mean you're weak. Your patience doesn't mean you're powerless. Because success doesn't shout, it builds quietly, steadily, until one day it speaks for itself. So if you've ever felt underestimated, and if you've ever felt invisible, let this be your reminder. Your time is coming. Stay patient, stay prepared, and let success do the talking. Because when it does, the people who once overlooked you will have no choice but to listen.
Thank you for watching till the end. Your thoughts matter more than you realize. Every story sparks a conversation, and sometimes a single comment can change someone's perspective. So, what are your thoughts on this story? Did it move you? Did it remind you of someone or something in your own life? Drop a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. And if this story touched you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your voice could be the one that inspires someone today.